joining us. I'd like to ask you about what you encountered in terms of the corporate incentives at the top of the company. Something like pushing patches and security updates to employee devices. Cyber hygiene is not easy, but that's a relatively low-cost way to mitigate a lot of risk. And there is significant risk here, reputational risk, financial risk. So why, based upon your experience working within Twitter's corporate leadership, would the company not have elected to take that step to mitigate risk in that relatively low-cost way, or other steps like that?
I didn't see any financial incentives at the top levels that would then give prioritization to such efforts. In fact, I saw incentives counter to that, and combined with a culture where the company needs a crisis to operate and is driven by crises, those didn't afford time or focus, from what I saw, to do the basic security hygiene.
What are the incentives against something like patching?
So it was just, so I'll give you an example. One of the things that I was surprised while I was there, we did a media day from the executives for the street. It was the first one that Twitter had done in a very long time. It set very ambitious goals for growth, for revenue growth, goals that I was concerned that the company would not be able to hit. Not too many months after that, there was an internal value creation award presented to me, offering $10 million if we tripled these growth goals. And I raised concern saying, I don't know how we can do that unless we entirely cut corners everywhere. I do not like this incentive structure. How are we going to be able to devote resources to the basics, such as fixing security patching, getting the systems up to date, building a development and testing environment for all of the different
Okay, but how is the growth incentive hostile to something like pushing software updates to employee devices? And given that is a, as I understand it, a fundamental security practice, a basic cyber hygiene practice, why were you unable to implement a change like that sort of baseline hygiene practice where you'd want all employee devices to be updated to the latest version?
Yes, I brought that up numerous times. I was repeatedly told that 92% of the systems had security software, and I kept asking, what is the security software reporting? It took me a month plus to get the truth that 30% of the systems were not received. They had turned off software updates. There was a culture of not reporting bad results up, only reporting good results up, because that was the internal incentive structure. You were rewarded based upon relationships and how you performed in an emergency, not for identifying existing errors and doing the groundwork for keeping the lights on running the business. My inability to find such basic information was disturbing.
So you couldn't get the authorization, for example, to implement an MDM system or some system to push patches out to user devices, or you just couldn't work the bureaucracy to make it happen?
I had the authorization. I couldn't get the real information because people were misrepresenting to the executive team, and the executive team was then further misrepresenting only good news and incorrect news to the board. So it took me several months to start going and getting ground truth and to find out that this had been a culture of only present good and positive reports up, and that's how you move forward in the company.
Okay. Let's talk about the data, much of it no doubt sensitive within Twitter's possession, and some of the most alarming aspects of your disclosure and testimony is that the extent to which Twitter may not know what it has. What would be, and of course you don't know what you don't know, but what would be an example of the kinds of data sets that Twitter might possess but not fully understand it possesses? And what would be the mechanisms other than monitoring user activity by which it would have accumulated such data?
Sure. One example, I was surprised to see that in an internal incident review in 2020, 50 million Twitter employees' information had been exposed. And that number confused me because Twitter doesn't have 50 million employees. Twitter has all of the information of all past employees, contractors, and other users because they haven't deleted that data. They've kept that data in that system, and those systems, when they are expose that information. That was surprising to me. Sorry, what was the second part of your question, sir?
No, that's helpful, and I'm running low on time, so I want to get to this next point, and I know some of my colleagues have covered it, but the risks associated with targeted advertising, whether for the purpose of inducing targeted users to click on links that could then harvest data about their devices or their web use or their location, or possibly inject malware, or for targeted influence campaigns. Can you please talk about what you observed and what you view to be the risks associated with the advertising model and the capability of enterprise clients of Twitter's to target ads and links to specific users?
Yes, so that area wasn't specifically my domain. That was under the executive of sales engineering. The parts that I believe are relevant were not only the additional report that we talked about earlier with the information operations, but I did see that data sets internally to the organization when I first joined, thousands of users had access to the advertisers' information, including their bank accounts and routing numbers. And when I first joined, people could change that information, and you could understand why changing the banking account information of a company such as Apple or Nike might be problematic.
Final question, and then I'll yield to Senator Hawley, and I'm going to follow up with you on this one for the record as well to get as much detail as possible. But what records, documents, or technical information, with as much specificity as you can muster right now, would you suggest that the Congress should seek from Twitter to understand the extent of the alleged lax security practices, but also what data may have been exfiltrated, when and by whom, what the level of national security risk might be? What should we be seeking from this company so that we can assess the level of risk and the threat and make policy accordingly?
Yes, sir. I submitted, I believe, 100-plus pages in my disclosure with data, talking about the sources of that data and providing a roadmap for investigators. I will do it a disservice trying to summarize the large numbers of sources and locations of that data, but hopefully my lawful disclosures provide that roadmap, and I'm happy to follow up.
Okay, we'll
with more
review it in
detail.
full and send you any follow-ups. Thanks for your testimony.
sir.
Senator Hawley for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.